Hello everyone and welcome to the GMS Magazine channel. I am Paco Garcia, your host, and this is the Board Game Interview Room, the show that admittedly I don't do often enough, in which I get together with some of the best people in the world of board games and ask them a ton of questions about their creations. I have been a massive fan of Perdition's Mouth Abyssal Rift since before it came out, because Dragon Dawn Productions keep doing amazing things, and I've been a big fan of them since I met them at Spiel nearly a decade ago. Now, Nikolas Patrakka has designed Perdition's Mouth card game Beyond the Rift, which I am really looking forward to. I've managed to obtain a pre-production copy of it, which I'm going to record a video to show you what's inside, and then I'm going to play it so I can tell you exactly how it plays, because I am mega excited. And talking to Nikolas has been an absolute joy and pleasure. So I am not going to go, on and on, even though I could so easily, because I'm looking forward to you listening to this interview, which I hope you will enjoy. I'll talk to you after the interview. Nikolas, welcome to the show. You come with glorious references. Ren Moltamaki recommends you, and he's working with you, and that, as far as I'm concerned, means that you are my friend now, right away. No reservations. Unless your connection stops from working, in which case it will be annoying, but never mind. Okay.
I hear you.
Yes. Okay. Before we start, I know that you're working on a card game version of Perdition's Mouth Abyssal Rift, which is probably my most favoritist dungeon crawler board game, because it's fantastic. It's just absolutely fantastic. And I know about Dragon Dawn, and I know about Ren and the family. I know absolutely nothing about you. Which is shameful on my part. So, who are you?
So, my name is Nikolas. I'm from Sweden. Well, I was actually born in Finland, grew up in Sweden, so I'm half Finnish, half Swedish. I live in Germany since 2009, and I'm a musician, a music teacher, and now since a couple of years also do some game design and game development.
That is quite a combination. I mean, music teacher and game designer. Okay, firstly, what comes first, the music or the games in your professional career, I mean?
Well, I mean, I guess it's a question, what do I spend the most time with? I would say 50-50. What do I earn the most money with? Music teaching, so.
Well, I mean, after having spent an awful lot of years interviewing an awful lot of game designers, both board games and role-playing games, making money out of games is not an easy task, I don't think, in any field. So
that's very true.
That doesn't surprise me at all. So how do you get involved in game design? Because I mean, in seriousness, having a career as a musician and a teacher, dividing your time into something that, let's face it, is not going to pay that much. Yeah. Why do you do it?
Well, so I started as a fan of Perdition's Mouth. Before that, I was playing a lot. I've been playing for many years a lot. And when they reached out and said they were looking for like playtesters, so I thought, okay, well, that sounds very interesting. And then I got sort of a sneak peek of upcoming expansions. I could print out the cards and try it out, and I guess I, like many other gamers, always feel that they could, design their own thing. Some can, maybe some can't. Whether I can or not, that's not for me to judge. But I guess some feel I can, and so just getting involved in that process was just something that was very enticing to me. I mean, of course, there's a lot of that sort of analysis and creativity that you get from the music, especially. I mean, I'm also classically schooled, so a lot of it is about analysis and understanding the fundamental structures of the things that you are creating and trying to interpret and also perform. And I feel like there's a little bit of that in board game design as well. So I guess that sort of interest and mentality could then flow from my profession also into my hobby, then that then also became sort of a sort of side profession for me.
That is really interesting because not many people think about music in maths, and mechanics way. So,
Yeah.
but I guess that for you, being able to dismember a musical piece and see how it actually works, not just
Yeah.
why we like it, but how it actually works, it must have an awful lot of parallelisms with board game design. What would be for you the most musically inspired, mechanics and mechanisms that spring to mind when you play a game?
Most musically inspired mechanism. Yeah, that's very interesting. I guess I would say that depends a little bit what type of music you're looking at. So let's say you're thinking of something like jazz or something that's a little bit more improvisational. I would probably look at something like a card game, like maybe something that has like a bit of deck building or maybe something like that where not only are you like drawing cards and you have to work with what you have, but you also have to sort of maybe feel what the other people are doing, maybe like a drafting game, where you have to look a little bit, okay, what are the other drafting? What am I supposed to be doing here at the table? I feel like that's maybe the jazz part. And then if I'm thinking more of a classical, I would probably say something like more of a modern Euro, something that's crunchy. It's a lot about sort of like finding the big structure and the right path forward. So I think those would be maybe like the two sort of like polar opposites in a sense.
Okay. So we have Duke Ellington for deck builders and Wagner for Eurogames.
Oh, perfect.
I like it. Okay. So you get involved into doing this board game design and you get to like Partition's Mouth. Now, from there to actually designing a game, and I know Rang well enough to know that he wouldn't just let anyone tinker with Partition's Mouth, even though he let me do it at some point when I designed one of the scenarios. So I guess that I'm shooting myself in the footing here, but he wouldn't just give anybody the task of creating a whole new game based on Perdition's Mouth, because Perdition's Mouth is such a fantastic, well-crafted and fine-tuned game. How did the two of you get together and start talking about this idea, this new game?
Well, so the idea of the game came from me. I made a simple prototype, then I pitched it. So there was never any talk about making a Perdition's Mouth card game, but I have understood in hindsight, it was something that they were thinking about in the family. But I don't know if there was ever like an actual sort of concept for it or anything. Oh, hello.
Otherwise it gets all annoying and that's just a puppy, but he's trying to kill me now. So I think he's going to go. Sorry.
Well, yeah. So anyhow, we went to a festival, or sorry, not festival. We went to a convention in Rostock, and there we were just demoing Perdition's Mouth. And then in the evening, we had some wine and something to eat, and then I sort of showed him the game and the sort of basic concept. Very, very basic. Everything was just handmade, like scribbled on pieces of paper. But he liked it well enough and thought it came close enough to sort of the spirit of Perdition's Mouth that it was a worthwhile pursuit. And so then I worked on it for probably a year or so, until we sort of came to a sort of a somewhat plausible prototype that we also started testing internally in the team, and that he also started testing. And now we're kickstarting it on the 19th of July.
Awesome. Tell me in that case about the game. What is it like? Is it going to be a dungeon crawler in a card game? Is it going to be a deck builder? Is it going to be a trick making, a backstabbing?
So no backstabbing and no trick taking. We call it an adventure card game. Maybe a little bit looser of a term than dungeon crawling, some would say, but has sort of this dungeon crawling feel. You have enemies, and these enemies are in the form of cards, All the actions are card-driven, so you have a hand of cards and you play them to do your different actions, being moving enemies around, attacking, manipulating objects, defending yourself, activating special abilities, and so forth. So I guess you could view it as you have Perdition's Mouth and you remove the board, and then all the enemies are cards, and all of the actions are also cards. So you don't have a rondel that has been completely replaced by cards, but then each hero has its own unique deck, which has a unique composition of these different abilities, which makes still playing each hero unique, which I think was one of the core experiences of Perdition's Mouth Abyssal Rift. But now I've sort of moved that away from, okay, you have this hero sheet with these abilities, and instead it's like, well, you have this deck of cards, and they sort of inform how you play and what you can do.
That I like an awful lot, because it sounds like it's making the game very accessible. I mean, Perdition's Mouth, it's a fantastic game, and I absolutely love it. But getting to grips with all the mechanics and all the mechanisms, all the rules, it takes some doing. It's not particularly easy. How is this game going to make it more accessible?
Well, first of all, price-wise, it's only cards, so it's going to be like a third of the price, maybe a quarter, a little bit depending what price you compare to, of course. So that's the first part, which is a real thing, right? Like not everyone even wants to spend that type of money on big board games, or maybe doesn't have the money. So that is an accessibility thing. So that's the first thing, and then the second thing I think is just sort of just the scope of it. You know, you have Perdition's Mouth Abyssal Rift, you have this huge board in the middle, and then you put everything out, and there's like a bunch of stuff going on, and this is a much more condensed play space. You have your hand of cards, you have your sort of hero area in front of you. If an enemy is there, then it's in front of you, and then there's a quest area in the middle. If the enemy is there, it's further away from you. So a lot of things have been sort of abstracted down so that it can be in this more smaller area of play, and I think that makes it also a lot more accessible.
In terms of gameplay, again, as I was saying, Perdition's Mouth, it's pretty hefty rules-wise. How is the new card game going to work rules-wise?
So I'll go through some of the basic mechanics. Maybe that can help you understand the answer a little bit better. So it's as I said, card driven, but it's also action point driven. So you start with an amount of action points, which is dependent on the hero, and you spend those action points to play your cards. So I think that is already one thing that makes the rules a little bit lighter, or a little bit easier to understand, because there's a set of core rules, which I think is generally a little bit less than in Perdition's Mouth. And then a lot of the card rules are then instead of the cards. So many of the cards have basic effects as defend, attack, gain more action points so you can pay for more cards, maybe draw more cards, and so on. And those that have more complex effects don't need to be explained in the rules, because you explain them on the cards and you learn them as you play. On top of that, there is a lot of player agency in how you use your cards. You have a lot of options of discarding cards to draw new cards, to sort of like choose what cards you use in each playthrough, and that also gives you more accessibility in the sense that you can choose to ignore some of the more complex effects. Maybe your results will be not as good. Maybe you're not like using the most powerful effects, but you'll actually have the choice there to just not use the cards that you feel are maybe too complicated or too difficult to understand.
How many cards are there going to be in the basic game, as in planned? Because I can imagine that later on things could change wildly. But in the basic game, how many cards are planned to be there?
So I don't have the exact number in front of me, but we're looking at something in the 350 to 400 card range, so quite a lot. And each hero has a starting deck of 26 cards. But what comes to that makes it so much is that all the enemies are cards, everything in the terrain that you encounter, like doors, traps, these portcullises that you also had in the Perdition's Mouth Abyssal Rift, rubble, other terrain pieces, all of that is cards. And then to that, there is a wound system, like a system of taking damage that is entirely card-based.
In terms of the gameplay itself, Perdition's Mouth obviously is very adventure scenario-based. I presume that this is going to be similar in that manner, or is this going to be a game that you start playing and you create something random every time?
So there's currently no such thing. I'm looking at something. I don't want to promise anything, but there is sort of an idea of a roguelike, as they're called, version of the game that I am thinking about, and I've been tinkering a little bit with. But that is a secret project that is currently not official. But the official game, as it stands now, will have one campaign per hero, and the campaigns are very short. So the campaigns consist of something like 3 to 4 scenarios, and each scenario plays in about, say, 20 to 30 minutes per player, usually a little bit less at the higher player count. So we're looking at something like, say, between 30 and 90 minutes per scenario. So it's designed in a way so that in an evening or maybe just a longer sitting, you could play a full campaign. And in each campaign, then it sort of tells the story of that particular hero. So if you're playing the first campaign, which is the Bastian's campaign, then you get also to know a little bit about the character of Bastian, where he comes from, what his past is, what he regrets, maybe what he would sort of like to change about the world of Zanziar, about himself, and also get to encounter some of the people from his past as well.
So what is the replayability value of the game going to be like? I mean, if you can play your campaign in, say, 1 or 2 evenings, and how many heroes are there going to be? 5, 6?
There are 4.
4,
but,
okay.
Potentially more through thresholds, okay. But we currently have 4 in the base game. Exactly.
Let's assume there are going to be 20. How are you making the game to be replayable so people can play the same campaign or make new campaigns? So how is that going to play?
So there are branching paths in every campaign. So just for take Bastian's first campaign, like very, very light spoilers ahead. It starts with one scenario. And then you have a choice in which direction you would sort of like to pursue the solution of this problem that they're faced with. And then those are 2 branches that you go along. So those are pretty much completely different playthroughs of the campaign. You will still play the first one each time you go through it, but you can then choose to go another path. Also, depending on what path you choose in certain campaigns, there will also be different results in future campaigns. So if a character, for example, was never encountered in the first campaign, that character might actually be doing something that affects the outcome of a campaign further down the line. So there are some sort of butterfly effects there that your choices sort of escalate through and cascades into each other. And then on top of that, if you're not playing with the full player count of 4, presuming now we have 4 heroes. If you have more, obviously you have even more choices. But let's say you play with 2 or 3 players, you can play with different compositions of heroes, and they play very, very differently. So the play style will change a lot depending on which heroes are in the party at the time.
In terms of the heroes themselves, what kind of abilities, what kind of characters are they going to be, mechanically speaking?
Mm-hmm. So mechanically speaking, we have Bastian, who is this sort of tank fighter, very, very classic, with a tower shield and a sword. We have Niffil, who is a sort of disgraced noble, who is now more of a rogue thief character. We have Elisa, who is a fire mage, and we have Olasabal, who is a dwarven tinkerer. So Bastian plays a lot like a normal warrior would. He defends well, he attacks well. He is a former general, so he has a little bit of a leadership ability. So if you play him not just, if you don't play him solo, if you play him in a larger group, in a party, he will have some ability also to bolster the others through different effects of his. Niffil is a lot about speed, a lot about manipulating the environments, a lot about generating debuffs. He has a lot of cards that he can put on enemies that makes them weaker. That is sort of a support character, but he also has a lot of abilities to manipulate his deck or the deck of others so that they can maybe draw the right cards he wants and so on. But he can also be a very potent fighter with his throwing knives. Then we have Elisa, who's a fire mage. She's generally pretty slow, can be difficult to play because she has very few ways of attacking, and maybe perhaps the first or even the second round of the game, but has ways of retaining a lot of cards in hand, pooling up her resources, and then you can usually have a couple of really big turns where she maybe is even able to kill all the enemies at the same time. So in a party, she tends to be someone that the others support and protect while she sort of builds her resources up to then have this big turn. And then there's Olasabal, who's a tinkerer. She has a variety of abilities to lay traps, to build bombs, but also a lot of protective things like a smoke machine that creates a smoke screen or a stone wall that she can use sort of in a toolbox-like manner to protect or to defeat enemies, a little bit dependent on what is necessary. She is also a very strong supportive character and has a lot of cards in her deck that are straight up for supporting others and have actually significantly stronger abilities if you use them on other heroes.
And what about the foes? What about the enemies? Because Perdition's Mouth has some really cool lore. How is that being translated to the card game?
So we have all the enemies you would know from the base game. But since we're now also outside in the world of Zanziar, we're not just in this dark dungeon of the cult. There are also some other deities that you might encounter in the world, such as orcs and dwarves, and those can also be possible to encounter during your adventures. But I shouldn't say too much on that to spoil things, but rest assured there are a variety of new enemies that you can encounter.
That sounds good. I really like that idea an awful lot because I mean, it's one of the things that I've been thinking for a very, very long time. And I think I've mentioned this to Rang at some point, that it would be really cool to have the role-playing game based on Perdition's Mouth. How are you expanding the lore in this game? How much of the world are we going to be able to meet and understand?
So quite a bit through the lens of the hero. So you will, as Bastian is a former army general, you will see a lot and learn a lot about how the Gory Empire works. You know, why he left the army. You know, what type of sort of bonds he has with the people who are still there, and how that drives him to make decisions that he's maybe not so happy with. Then we also have things like Elisa, who is an elf, and then we get to learn about the elves a little bit through her. And then obviously Olasabal being a dwarf, and also Niffil has his own past that all sort of comes in sort of fragments here and there to sort of make a picture of a little bit what the world is about. There is a world book, which I think is the best way to figure out if you really want to go deep on the lore. And this sort of fleshes more out the story about the individual heroes. But you don't need to know all the lore to actually be able to play and understand the game. This is more of a sort of the personal journey of the individual heroes.
But it gives a very good, very nice flavor. I don't know, it just feels like it is such a gritty, dark, and difficult to survive world in it. It's so, as far as I'm concerned, it's so interesting. The board game has a massive tactic aspect to it, to the point where you really have to think very hard, especially in some of the scenarios. Every single movement, every single reach, every single attack. Otherwise, one mistake can throw the whole adventure or askew.
Yeah.
Are we going to get the same level of depth of tactical depth in the card game, or is this going to be more of a building up your, as you were saying with the wizard, building up the resources and strategizing long term?
Well, there's going to be a mix. A lot of the characters play in a tactical sense, and some play in a little bit more of a strategic sense. But it's more tactics heavy than strategy heavy.
Okay.
So in that sense, it is more like a Perdition's Mouth Abyssal Rift. On the difficulty, that is something that we sort of listen to the fans a little bit. I know that a lot of people think it's maybe too difficult. I mean, obviously, Ren probably would disagree, but you have to listen to the fans, right? And so what we have here is that there's actually a several levels of difficulty that you can sort of set. So there will be a way to just play it on sort of easy mode where it will be a challenge, but not like being punished for every mistake level challenge that you can then play if you just want to sort of experience the game and go through it, because not everyone plays a game a ton of times. Maybe you play 3-4 times and they want to see most of it in that time, right? And then you can put it on that easy difficulty. Then we will have a normal and a hard mode. Hard mode, I guess, is sort of the Perdition's Mouth Abyssal Rift mode, where you really need to know what you're doing. And normal is then something in between. So
that sounds good. I like that idea. I think is absolutely brilliant, because yes, it can be frustrating at times, and sometimes we just like to play to find out what the story is all about, not necessarily to overcome a challenge. So that is pretty good. In terms of adventure and campaign design, are there going to be any guidelines so people can create their own adventures, or is this something that you want to do by more expansions at a later date?
So I don't think there's anything in the game that inherently stops you from creating your own designs, but I've been it's been one of the things that I found most important in working on. One of the things I've focused on the most is that there is a big variety in how the scenarios are designed. Like, I'm not going to mention any game in particular, but I feel like a lot of games in this genre, they have a lot of scenarios that are a little bit similar. You go into the dungeon and you kill everything and then you go out. And and I really wanted to find a way to just design scenarios where you do a lot more. It's like, in this scenario, you are just trying to get these people out of a burning house. Or in this another scenario, you are trying to really get through this tunnel before it collapses. And in this other scenario, maybe you are just fighting, right? But there's this big variety of it. And that makes it, I think, a little bit difficult to give people like this kit and say, okay, like, here are the 3 things. Like, these are the amount of monsters you want. These are the amount of, I don't know, like, terrain effects, and here you go. Now you can make your own thing. So right now there is no like official way that you can make your own material, but I mean, all the cards are there. I think it's very possible that people can make their own design. And as I said, I'm also looking at something that is more of a sort of roguelike version where you can just go through and things come sort of semi-randomly together, and you can just sort of play as long as you want. But that is sort of not an official version yet.
It would be really cool to have some sort of conversion guide, so you could, get, from, I don't know, D&D or Pathfinder or any other fantasy RPG, and to be able to say, you take this bestiary and you swap this stat for this stat and that stat for that stat, you can get completely new monsters for the game. Is that something that you think could be achieved if people wanted to get that?
I think like different stats, I think it's hard just by how the cards are designed. I think that would just be very difficult, because you would pretty much have to like copy paste stuff on and off somehow, like have stickers or something. But there's probably some way to make sort of an, I don't know, like an infinite dungeon where you just start, you flip a card, and then it's like, okay, now put this and this and this enemy, and they behave like this, and now go. And once you defeated them, then some other random thing happens. You just keep playing as long as you can. I think such a concept could work, but I don't think that level of sort of like player agency would be possible here. I don't know. I think in RPGs you have more freedom also because you have a GM, and the GM can always decide in the end, okay, well actually this is how it works, and so on. And I think in a board game people just expect, I mean I would at least, that there is some sort of a system where there isn't ambiguity in that sense. And role-playing games can have a lot of ambiguity, and that's fine, right? So
that's very true. What's been the most challenging aspect of designing the card game for you?
I think the scenario design, as I said, since I from the get-go wanted to have scenarios where there's a lot of variety in what you're doing and why. That has been very challenging to find play patterns that are interesting, yet you're you're reaching for different goals. So I think that's the nice thing when you have these sort of patterns, like, well, now we just go in and we kill all the enemies. Then you just tweak the numbers, right? Okay, there are more of these enemies, and there are more of these, less of these enemies, and so on. And you can sort of make a mathematical calculation of it in a sense. But here it's the variety of the scenarios is so big that has been really the challenge to actually create not just scenarios that are different for the sake of being different, but they're actually different in the sense that they feel different and they have play patterns that are different and engaging.
And what's been the most rewarding bit about creating the game?
Well, same answer probably. No, I think also working with people on it and seeing how people react. You know, do play tests, see what makes people tick, what is interesting, what is not. Seeing people's reaction, not only the good ones, but sometimes also the bad ones, and seeing the system evolve through there. I think there's been a lot of concepts that I thought were very clever and easy to understand that I just then had to axe at some point because it was just so incredible. I mean, you just start with the rules explanation. It's like people just aren't understanding what I'm talking about, you know. And I guess that's what the writers always call kill your darlings. Now that it's been a lot of that, and that's been very rewarding to, like, when you look back at it and you see, okay, well that's where I started, and this is where I am now, and that's actually that part's been great.
Excellent. Okay, and to wrap things up a little bit, let's assume that this is going to be a massive success, and it would be absolutely okay. I know, for me, I speak for myself, it is a lot more interesting for me to back games and to invest in games where there is going to be some sort of continuity. I know that people berate having expansions an awful lot, but I like the idea that a game is going to be well supported. What are your ideas for the future of your game?
Well, so if it does well enough, obviously, there are a ton of heroes from Perdition's Mouth Abyssal Rift, and every single one of them could be in the car, could have a card game version. I have actually several heroes that I worked on during the process that are now sort of in my side box where they are not being worked on currently, that have sort of more advanced mechanics that I decided were not suitable for a base game. So that would be a way, and I think currently there are 13 heroes, and currently we have 4 announced through stretch goals. Hopefully the base game will have a little bit more, but yeah, I think I wouldn't say the sky's the limit, but at least 13.
That would be actually pretty amazing, because that would definitely make the game like a very long fantasy movie, and I like the sound of that a lot.
Oh, yeah, that's true, yeah.
And then Netflix can come and make a series of it, which would be great, or HBO.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
No, I think they should. I think if they're listening to this, they should definitely do it. So come on,
yeah, just call me.
Yeah.
Call me.
Yes. Nikolas, thank you so much. It is genuinely exciting to see this happening, because Perdition's Mouth has been one of those games that deserves so much more attention than it's got, and I hope that reinvigorating the IP with a new format of game based on the same premise, it could be such a wonderfully positive thing for the game. So I'm hoping that it will be immensely successful.
I hope so too.
And hopefully we'll have you around. Oh, by the way, something I haven't asked. I beg your pardon. When are people meant to be getting their games once the whole campaign is over?
So we're probably looking at October of next year.
October 2022.
Yeah.
Spiel.
Oh yeah, of course, for Spiel.
Yes. We should be back by then.
I hope so. Like I know they're talking about having Spiel this year. I mean, we'll see about that. I probably won't be there, but next year, yeah, that could be a thing.
Yeah, amazing. Because this year I think may go to Dragon Meet in December. Because just one day, and it's December already. But I think this year, no conventions for me, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, probably not for me either.
So 2022. Well, hopefully we'll meet there.
That will be awesome.
That'd be amazing. Thank you. Seriously, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I very, very much look forward to seeing what comes out of this.
Yeah, me too. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Take care.
Okay, I am really excited about this game because Beyond the Rift, I mean, Perdition's Path, the whole lore and setting of the whole game has so much potential to become so many things, and it's so expandable. There are so many scenarios for it, and I really hope that my dog is not going to keep barking and that we're going to keep seeing expansion after expansion of these games so much. Please keep an eye on forthcoming videos of what's inside the box, and also my review and how to play this game that should be really good. Leave me your comments. I look forward to hearing what you have to say, but until the next time, I will talk to you very, very soon. Take care.